Hello everyone. Is the stream should be working? Oh, I'm so nervous, everybody. Hello. Today we are looking at Columbina, talking about her kits and her gear and her teams. We will also be looking at her meta performance, how big her impact is on the meta, and I've decided to do this as a stream. I will do the post-release as an actual video, but I've just been both procrastinating as well as other things that happened, made it so that it's just easier for me to do a presentation live. And I can just say everything that I would have wanted to say in the video. And it also has the big advantage that you can ask me questions during the presentation itself, but you can also just keep your questions and ask them at the end, because then it's more likely that I will actually respond to them. So yeah, keep that in mind. With that, I don't think I need to talk anymore. I will just start already. So Columbina pre-released by me. Let's just start. So let's start with the kit analysis. As I've already explained, first kit analysis, then her gearing, and then her team selection, as well as her meta performance. And let's start with the kit. So Columbina is an HP scaling catalyst. She's an off-field Hydra unit. She has a crit ascension. This will matter, the crit rate ascension specifically. It locks certain gear because she does run into crit rate overcap, but that's another story. Then we have her high base HP, which is the stat she uses for all of her offensive stuff. So then the most important aspect of her kit is the fact that she enables all of the lunar reactions. Okay, it is arguably not the most important part of her kit, but this is like the first thing that jumps out of, like it is the Columbina mechanic, just like Farina enables HP drain, for example. Then let's just start with her skill. So her skill does hydro damage every 2 seconds and applies hydro on every singular hit. It has a rather large AoE. It is also dependent on Ascendant Gleam. So if you are in Ascendant Gleam, then the AoE gets bigger. Also, I forgot to mention regarding the base damage, it is buffed by 7%. If you have 35,000 HP, so she has an actual, she needs to reach that 35,000 HP before she can invest into other stats, unless it's specifically to get her burst, and which energy recharge would be better, but we are getting into that regarding the gear. So she does a lunar hit every 6 seconds. She accumulates gravity, like 20 every 2 seconds. And if she has 60, then she will trigger her actual lunar or direct lunar hits. If it's lunar charge, that is the most accumulated, then it's 1 direct lunar charge hit. If it's lunar crystallize, then it's 1 direct lunar crystallize hit. And if it's lunar bloom, it is 5 direct lunar bloom hits. This matters a lot for the Lauma synergy, which we will also get into later. It has a 25-second duration. Usually you use it off cooldown, or like 18 seconds. Every 18 seconds, so it doesn't matter too much, but it's still nice that it has such a long duration. And it has a 17 seconds cooldown. Okay, now her burst. It doesn't look like much. It's like, yeah, 40% lunar reaction bonus when crowned, 20-second duration, 18-second cooldown, but like Nahida, also speaking of, it has a large, it's like a field, and the field is as large as Nahida's burst. So it basically covers the entire chamber or the entire Stygian chamber. So you won't miss out on these buffs, basically. And it enables her Ascension 4, which we will talk about soon. So Ascension 1 is 5% crit rate every time you trigger an interference, which is the Lunar sub-DPS mechanic. This is basically effectively 15% crit rate almost always. At the start it's a bit less, but it just usually is like 14% average or something. It really doesn't matter that much that it's a bit that it needs a bit of ramp up time. And then Ascension 4, there's a 33% chance to get an additional hit for Lunar Charged or Lunar Crystallize damage, which is basically a 33% buff to these transformative reactions. It's just based on chance, meaning sometimes you will get more than that, sometimes you will get less than that. And that is actually kind of cool, because it means that there's variance in her gameplay. In my opinion, that's cool. To some people that would be cringe, but I actually like this passive. And then she has the 3 extra Verdant Dew in Lunar Bloom. Hello to the chat, everybody. I'm very happy to have you today. And then, exactly, the charge attacks do consume Verdant Dew, and they deal the 3 Lunar Bloom hits. This is important because she can be run as her own carry just because of that charge attack. Next. Okay, the quick TLDR. For Crystallize, or Lunar Crystallize, it is only Hydra and Geo. It's only when Hydra and Geo react. It summons 3 constructs as soon as the reaction lands, and then it deals damage every 3 applications, and it removes the 1 second global ICD for Crystallize or something. I forgot what it was, but how it worked. It doesn't work like that. It effectively works the exact same way as the other normal non-crystallized reactions that are also transformative. The damage is okay. I will also get into obviously her own personal damage, how good it performs, but the damage of this reaction is the same as a Lunar Charged, and Columbina specifically also buffs the reaction itself, but it's like, it is just a nice way of additional sub DPS, and building your team around it can be risky. It is technically kind of doable. We've seen some small like footage, but you cannot clear like Fearless or something with it. It's more of a cursed build. It does react with Zhongli's Resonance and with and it goes with Chiori Adore. The first one, in my opinion, does not matter at all. It just means that Zhongli has like 80k more personal damage if Zhongli's pillars decide to hit, which isn't even guaranteed because Zhongli's pillars can easily be destroyed. So do not hype up anything Zhongli related. He doesn't do damage. And then Chiori's doll, it's basically a free C1, so that is actually something that is worth mentioning in my opinion. It is quite the upside. And then all the effects that are triggered by Crystallize reaction are also going to be triggered no matter if the condition couldn't apply. So like the shield that you need for the for Navia set, or Petra that you need to pick up the crystal, you don't need to do that anymore. Navia we will get into later what this means for Navia. So her constellations, I know this isn't traditionally like that. You usually talk about gear before constellations, but in my opinion, I want to talk about her kit first, and I feel like it makes more sense in this case. So what her constellation, each constellation does is C1, C3, C4, and C5 each provide 1.5% lunar elevation. like an additional lunar elevation is just an additional multiplier. If you do not, the good thing about this is a lunar elevation is only present in C6s, and Columbina effectively enables lunar elevation outside of C6s, which is kind of makes her C2 bigger. But as we will find out, her C2 isn't actually massive, insane. It is quite good, but we will talk about it. And then C2 and C6 provide 7%, so if you stop at C2, you get 9.5% lunar elevation, like for all reactions. That includes the direct damage as well as the transformative damage. C1 gives you an additional interference when you do a skill cast, and then you get an additional effect based on the interference triggered for each different interference with like different durations, but the duration don't really matter. Resistance to interruption if it's Lunar Bloom, which does not matter at all because Nefer already does dash cancels usually, so it's really bad for Nefer specifically. The energy for Flins, like in Flins teams there would be energy, it is good, kind of. It kind of depends, but yeah, you can save like 20% energy recharge ideally, and that is actually quite okay. And then you also get a shield, which situationally can be extremely valuable for Zibai, because her last slot doesn't actually provide, unless you play Zhongli, it's actually not a shield, and I don't think that we should assume Zhongli because he's a very old, outdated unit, and you don't actually want to go for Zhongli just because you have Zibai. It's like, it's complicated. When we get to Zibai, then yeah. And C2, that is C1, then C2 speeds up the gravity accumulation, which is effectively just one more interference per rotation. So with like at C0 it's 3 per, because it's 6 seconds, so an 18-second rotation it is 3 interferences. With C1 it is 4, and with C2 it's 5. And this also heavily makes a difference regarding Lauma's quiz, because Lauma doesn't actually keep up with C2, but that's another story that we will get into that. Then it also buffs her own HP by 40%, and then you get an additional buff around 160 EM, 450 flat attack, and 450 flat defense, depending on if it's Lunar Bloom, Lunar Charged, or Lunar Crystallize interference triggered. And this also has good uptime, so you won't lose this buff. Oh yeah, sorry. True, I realized. Wait 1 second. Oh no. Okay. I hope this works. So yeah, then this is actually the C2. I will also talk about the C2 as an increase. It is quite nice, but it's usually worse than going for C2 Lauma or R1 Nefer. Those are more important investments, so I generally would say that C2 is like, it is a nice stopping point for a lot of teams, but in general, the main upside I can see is if you're playing 2 teams or like 2 or even 3 Lunar teams, and this effectively means that you are buffing all of these teams. Obviously, you cannot run 2 at the same time without running Columbina twice, so you would need to use Aino, but still this has technically situationally more value than Lauma C2, for example. But it heavily depends. We will get into that. The main thing, this small buff here is not that big. It's the EM is already pretty oversaturated in Nefer Teams. It is still nice, of course. Then the flat attack, it's only for Flins, which means that it is also diminished, and the defense is actually also kind of annoying because actually no, it is quite good. I think it's the best out of these three, I believe. I'm not sure though. But yeah, these are still like, they are decent, but the main thing is actually the Columbina personal damage increase. This increases by her personal damage by a huge amount, the 40% HP and the sped up gravity accumulation. Anyway, enough yap. C3 then increases the skill level, which is very important for a sub DPS. C4 is 20 energy, and then a small flat buff for herself only. I forgot to mention this, but it's only for herself. It doesn't really matter much. It's mainly the 20 energy that's good. The C5 is burst level, so the C5 is really bad. But the C6 is, it's 80% team-wide lunar crit damage, so it ends up being around like a 30%-ish increase for the team, which for a support C6 is actually good. Like, it is better than her C2, but obviously it's C6. It better be better than the C2. But yeah, people have been underwhelmed by this constellation. I kind of get it, because it doesn't actually do anything for carry Columbina specifically, but still, it is quite the good constellation. So if you go for C6 Columbina, you won't be disappointed or anything. It is still quite the good constellation. It's not insanely cracked for a C6, but it's very good. Okay, stopping point is like C0 or C2. C2 is less important than vertical, as I just said. Okay, her gear. Let's talk about her energy recharge requirements. She has similar energy recharge requirements to Farina, since they have the exact same particle generation, and Columbina doesn't front load the particles, so she gets all of her particles when she's off field. That means her energy recharge requirements are very high. So I want you to note this and keep this in mind always when discussing Columbina. Like a certain content creator said, I heavily disagree with that, but they said that Columbina doesn't need to burst in certain teams, or like you can burst off cooldown. I think that is a pretty big loss if you do not burst every rotation, so please build enough energy recharge in every single team that you use her in. Unless it's like Skirk or something. Obviously in Skirk you don't need to burst, but Skirk is bad with Columbina anyway. We are also talking about that later. Anyway, Prototype Amber, 150 to 160% energy recharge because of the 18 energy refunded. Oh yeah, those are at C0. These are at C0. This is with C4. This is on field, and this is with Aino. But yeah, Prototype Amber 150 to 160. Non-Prototype Amber is really high. And then Signature is a bit higher than Prototype Amber because it's 14 energy, not 18 energy. And then Favonius is like 180 to 190. She gets the clear particles, but it's not that big. But we are going to discuss Favonius as weapon options right now, actually. So Prototype Amber is her general best in slot. It helps her reach the 35k HP that you need to reach. Oh, the Prototype Amber is slightly covering the text, but it's fine. And it is, honestly, it is really good. It's a really good weapon, and you could see, you could literally see how much energy this saves. It's like 60% energy, even sometimes more than that. So yeah, Prototype Amber is really strong. The only issue with this weapon, specifically in Stygian, is that you don't get the energy before bursting. You need to burst first. So the first that's a big problem in Stygian. The first burst still costs 60 energy, but every other burst that's like used after the first burst costs 42 energy. I feel like you really want to heavily invest in Bina. C4 should be the absolute most you should go, in my opinion. I think her C6 is like, if you are, I wouldn't stop at C4. I think you should for sure stop at C2. I don't see C4 as a stopping point. You should either do C2 or go straight to C6. The C6 isn't bad enough that you would stop at C4 just to not get C6, if that makes sense. Okay. So anyway, Favonius, it really depends. It can be her best weapon, but generally I wouldn't recommend it. I would usually just recommend Prototype Amber. But in Flins team specifically, energy recharge is an offensive stat in a way. Or like losing energy is an offensive stats because Flins actually builds like 135 or even 130, like 130 to 135 energy, and dropping that for offensive stats is actually quite good. So and also because Ineffbina specifically also has a shield that she provides, I do actually think highly of Favonius, specifically in Flins teams, but we will also talk about Flins Columbina relatively soon. But generally, I wouldn't recommend Favonius. Then Signature, it is a huge bump in her personal damage, like very big. The problem is that she's always like 20% of the team's damage at C0 R0, and bumping that damage up to like 30% or 40%, which is also another issue with her C2, it's actually not that big of a team-wide increase. And Columbina's sub DPS specifically doesn't have a huge advantage. She doesn't front load her damage. She kind of does. Okay, she kind of does, but it's not controlled front load. She just front loads uncontrolled, if that makes sense. You cannot decide when it's happening. And she also doesn't really have insanely large AoE on her Lunar damage. Specifically, she has large AoE on her Hydra application. But yeah, but yeah, that's one of the issues. And I still think highly of Signature, specifically if you have C2 or if you are playing carry Columbina. If you're playing carry Columbina, then her Signature is a must, basically, for the team to be competitive with with the Lunar carries. But anyway, Sacrificial Jades, generally no. You just overcap on crit rate, and it doesn't provide energy recharge, which is a huge deal because, like, outside of, like, if you play her on field, obviously you can build less energy recharge, but those are the scenarios where you play the not quite carry set, which gives you 30% crit rate. And if you don't run the set, then Columbina's not doing any damage. She really wants the set to do damage if she's on field. Then 5-star statistics. This is supposed to say 5-star stats. So yeah, 5-star stats. Statistics? No, statistics. Exactly, that's what it was supposed to say. Not the 5-star statistics. Honestly, I do not think they are worth it. Maybe slightly better than Prototype Amber, but without defensive utility and without the energy passive. So, like, obviously, it kind of makes up in some kind of other, like, offensive stat, but if she needs to build like 230% energy recharge in teams, then obviously you want energy recharge sands and ideally an energy recharge weapon. So you might just not be able to build enough energy recharge. But yeah, so I wouldn't recommend it. And TDDS also wouldn't recommend it. Specifically because Flins is 40% or like 43% of the team's damage if you run Columbina. So giving him that attack bonus when attack also isn't the greatest stat on him. Like, it is quite good, but not the greatest. I don't think it's worth it. And in other scenarios like Ineffbina, Columbina, kind of duo carry, which we will also discuss later, then Ineffbina kind of has bad uptime on TTDS. So yeah, in general, do not run TTDS unless you know exactly what you're doing. Artifacts. So knights. Wait, no. Okay. If you on-field her and play her as a carry, then you want the Night Sky set, which is obviously the carry set, gives you 30% crit rate, and that heavily affects the way you build her, because you do not want a crit rate circlet, you do not want a crit rate weapon, otherwise you will overcap. Since she has 15% crit rate and like initially, and then also has 90% crit rate from Ascension. Then if she's off field and no one is using SMS, and also, yeah, exactly, then you want to run her on SMS. So Serenade, that's this set right here. Oh, whoops. And then if she's off field and someone else is using Serenade, like in Zibai Teams, as we will discuss, then you want to run her on the new sub DPS set. Also note that it gives 20% energy recharge, which makes it much easier to build your Columbina. Then main stats, HP crit or energy recharge HP crit. Usually it will be the first one. With a Push It Up Amber Serenade, you usually just have enough energy recharge and substats. Then substats, obviously energy recharge until you have enough. Burst every rotation, it is very important. Is better than crit, is better than HP percent, is better than EM. HP percent is better than crit if you're under 35,000 HP. It is really important to hit this 35,000 HP cap. And then crit is a much more offensive stat than HP percent in EM, specifically with Lauma, because Lauma provides so much flat buffing that it's really important to, because the EM and the HP percent doesn't buff Lauma's quills, but the crit would actually buff Lauma's quills. There's just this huge gap. Then the maximum amount of crit rate you need is 85% crit rate without Lauma, 75% with Lauma, and then if it's carry Columbina, 45% crit rate. Do not build more than this, it is entirely wasted. Now the teams. Columbina's teams, she has quite a lot, but I will first focus on the wheelchair. So you have been seeing this sort of team idea that you run Columbina, Ineffbina, Sucrose, and then just hope to be carried. I do not think highly of it. I think it is quite annoying that people are hyping it so much. Specifically, people are using the Lunar Shill argument, but Shill is temporary. The point of Shill is that it switches every single patch. You shouldn't pull a character for Shill because the Shill changes every single patch. I want everyone to realize that. Pull for the characters who you want to pull for and maximize them. Then outside of extremely big cases, it is usually just better to invest vertically. For example, for Neuvillette, his C1 and R1, and so many people also have Farina. C1 Farina, all better stopping, or like all better increases than getting the side grade with Columbina Ineffbina. Also because people are frauding with KQMs and like getting better results with that. To be fair to Neuvillette, also kind of rather counts to the characters that well, his damage numbers are rather slightly outdated, so it might actually better at low investment. But the thing is, most people don't have this C0 R0 Neuvillette with C0 R0 Farina. They are baseline C1 Neuvillette with signature. And in that case, obviously it won't be better to go for Columbina Ineffbina. Then Ito, Noel, Ningguang, Navia have no, zero synergy with Lunar Crystallize. There is some, like very slightly synergy with Ningguang, because Ningguang has a ton of applications as far as I know, but Ningguang herself does not want to build any sort of crits. No, does not build any sort of EM, I mean, or like defense. Like she doesn't scale with the archetype, with Columbina's C2, for example, or like the buffs that are just floating around in these kinds of teams, specifically EM. And Lunar Reaction Bonus would also only buff her Crystallized contribution. But long story short, do not play any of these with the... Like, obviously you can still use them, but I wouldn't recommend for Ito, Noel, Ningguang, or Navia mains to go for Columbina, because it will just end up being a wheelchair. Specifically with Ito, she's out damaging, like she's doing more than 50% of the team's damage. Actually, same with Noel and same with Ningguang. It's the case for all of these. And then for the brick cases, there will just always be a new wheelchair, because as you might have noticed, Citlali Marika was the wheelchair 1 year ago. I want everyone to realize that this was the wheelchair that everyone's been hyping up. And the same exact thing happened in Honkai Star Rail with Tribi and Hyacinth. So do not just like go for these wheelchairs just for the wheelchair. Never give in to wheelchairs, exactly. Nefer. So Nefer is the actual first important carry that we are going to talk about. She has a huge quality of life upgrade with Columbina. First, because of the prototype amber healing, more consistent application, as well as extra verdant dew, which are the overcap verdant dew. Or not overcap, but like the specific Columbina verdant dew that you can use. This enables Lauma's Hold E, which makes it so that Lauma's Hold E buffs her own damage, because Hold E is quite the nice motion value, and then Columbina's damage as well. Now, I think people might have missed this regarding Columbina, but it is important to note that Columbina's base Lunar Bloom hits are half of what Lunar Crystallize and Lunar Charged hits are. I don't want you to think that, like, oh, her baseline is so strong in sub DPS, and then Lauma is also buffing her, so that gives a huge bonus. But no, that's not how it works. You need this Lauma Quill damage for your Columbina to be similar in personal damage to the Flins and Zibai archetype. That is something very important to note, and I don't want anyone to forget that. Then she herself buffs Nefer less than Aino, because like we will get into this later, but Aino actually does a lot. And then especially with C6 Aino, but she buffs her own personal damage and Lauma's personal damage. Also, C2 Lauma and R1 are now better, or like C2 Lauma is better than C1 R1 Nefer, and then Lauma signature is also very important. Then 2-piece triple EM Lauma is optimal, but you also want to get crit in her artifacts, because she does around like 250k DPR. She's like 5% of the team's damage. So you do like to see some crit on her. It's not insanely important, but like you don't have anything else to build anyway, so. And Sucrose does buff Lauma, so Sucrose is very important as the last slot. And then she's kind of bad without Lauma. She's a side grade effectively if you don't have Lauma, which will be explained in the next slide, which is why Aino in Nefer Teams doesn't lack a kit. So we've all been seeing the anti-Aino agenda, which is people saying that Aino lacks a kit. I want to debunk this once and for all, because Okay, technically she doesn't really have a kit, but she still provides that C1 with the ATEM. That is pretty big for Nefer. And then C6 as well. But those are the small things. The important things are the Forest Regalia, which is a Sumero craftable. At R5 it provides 120 EM. And you just have to pick it up. Because it's dash cancels that you do on Nefer, you can easily, freely go around the enemy. And we haven't gotten a lot of enemies that like straight up the leaf got stuck under them. I never actually also experienced it with the Baptist. Baptist was just easy to get that leaf. And then 240 EM for free, it's kind of bad chest, because effectively it's more like 180 EM, because the instructor only has like half of the uptime. but anyway, this also is actually a good thing, because it means that the first 3 charge attacks are buffed more than the last 3 charge attacks, which is a front load upside. A bit of front load, isn't that nice? Okay, now I'm just reaching, but it's fine. Then obviously short rotations, short animation, low burst cost, no investment needed. Those are all upsides. It's not actual sheet upsides, but it's just upsides outside of that. Most of these upsides are in Nefer Teams only, very important to note. Then Aino versus Columbina. Then Columbina obviously scales better with the Lauma vertical, with the C2 and stuff. There's no circle impact. There's actual defensive utility with Columbina's prototype amber option. And then she's just a big increase in general if you have C0, R0 Nefer. And she also enables her own vertical. Aino, on the other hand, fixes the rotation extension and cyanosis problem, which like is a downside for these here. It's supposed to, yeah. Wait, I have to rephrase this. I accidentally phrased it like an anti-Columbina. So if you Aino / Columbina's downside. So Columbina's downside is rotation extension. The Nefer vertical is diminished. If you have it, then Columbina's increase is lower, like getting Columbina herself. Then Nefer is obviously a huge part of her team's damage, and she's the only one needing that hyper investment. And then for another Columbina downside is that Lauma E only works, Lauma Holdy only works second rotation onwards, but your first rotation is usually bricked in Lunar Teams, which makes it not matter that much. And then a very niche upside for Aino is that Aino buffs Nefer more in like because more of the team's damage is actually coming from Lauma quiz in Nefer Teams. Right. I don't know where to put myself. Because of more of the team is coming from Lauma quiz, that means more of the team's damage is single target damage. If you have Aino, however, a bigger portion of the team's damage is AoE damage. But it's a very small upside, obviously, because we don't get any AoE. But yeah, final verdict, Columbina usually wins. Unless you have Nefer C1R1 or Nefer C2R1, at which point I'm very sorry, but that was inoptimal anyway. Columbina is better to go for it. The priority is Nefer first, then Lauma, then Columbina, and then you think about C2 Lauma. The route isn't C1 Nefer anymore. I know it's very depressing, but yeah. But for those specific scenarios, it honestly might just be better to get C2 Lauma before C0 Columbina if you have C2 R1 Nefer. But obviously Columbina still has her other upsides, which are the defensive utility, and that she enables her own vertical. Carrybina, which is just running Columbina with Aino Sucrose, for example, and then Lauma to enable Columbina's special charge attacks. She's very squishy. She has extremely low base defense, Her HP is quite high, but not like 50k. It's like 35k to 40k, and then at C2 it's like more like 45k. But yeah, in general she is rather squishy, and she also is a catalyst, and she doesn't really have a lot of interruption resistance. Luckily her C1 gives herself interruption resistance, which is kind of funny. That it's actually better for Carrybina than it is for Nefer. Then it's very heavily reliant on Lauma investments, because Lauma is a huge part of the team's damage. Not Lauma herself, not Lauma's own damage, but Lauma's quill is. Columbina is effectively the quill abuser, so it's not really Carrybina, it's just Lauma quill driver. 1 second. Okay. Then the performance, if you go for a signature, which would be 3 cost, similar to Nefer, it is similar in terms of damage. It is worse, but still, it is quite impressive that Columbina can do so much. Then signature is disgusting increase-wise. It is really huge. Then obviously she's not better than Flins or Zibai or Nefer, but she's still quite impressive. So if you want to play her, absolutely go for it. It is a good team, really good team. Then I wouldn't recommend Ineffbina for the last slot, because she's technically 1 additional cost. There's not much behind it. Like, I would rather go for her signature than go for Ineffbina. But yeah. And yeah, Columbina is huge instead of Ineffbina. Okay, next team. Flins. He is the biggest winner out of Columbina. This had multiple upsides. Aino is bad for Flins. There was no beating around the bush. Aino buffed Flins technically like a slight amount with C1, but didn't have the first regalia. Instructor was clunky, and he actually, like, if you run Nefer, he's not even a huge, like a 90% damage contributor of the team's damage. So buffing Flynn's damage isn't that impactful to the team DPS anyway. And Columbina does do that. Columbina actually buffs team-wide. And yeah, it actually makes the gap between him and Nefer closer. I still would think more highly of Nefer. But yeah, Columbina is always better than Flins. Oh yeah, true. Columbina is just a huge team. I don't know what else to say. Once again, then C1, Columbina should help Flint's energy recharge requirements, should make you save out on like 10% to 20% energy recharge. Then R1, specifically, Ineffbina R1 is really good because it buffs the team. You have 3 damage dealers. You have Flins, Ineffbina, and Columbina. Flins is around 43% of the team's damage. Ineffbina is around 39% of the team's damage, and then Columbina should be like 20%, something like that. Is the math mathing? I think the math is mathing, hopefully. And then yeah, she is actually, R1 is actually slightly better than Flint C1 or R1, even though Flint C1 and R1 are huge. They are huge for himself, but that's the biggest problem. You do nerf Flint's Flint's contribution. So there's technically an argument to be made regarding Flint's vertical, but I don't want to do that. I feel like the Nefer argument, there's a bigger argument for there was a bigger argument for Nefer regarding vertical. Then yeah, as I've already said, I know for Flins is bad. Flins, oh yeah, true. the wheelchair thing, people are saying that Flins is getting wheelchaired. He isn't getting wheelchaired. He's still the biggest contributor, and he has his own upsides, like the very front-loaded nature of his damage. There's no front load other than that, unless you have C2 Ineffbina. And yeah, his burst is like also a pretty big portion of the team's damage still, considering that it's like 2 hits at once. And then like 4 hits in total, but that is like concentrated a big part of the team's damage. So yeah, I hope you understand this upside. So yeah, next. And then Sucrose Bina Taser with Fischl and Sucrose. So this is like poverty Flins, but it actually works surprisingly. If you go for Nefer signature or Columbina signature, it should be worse than Flins still, but it is quite close. It is a similar situation to 3 cost Nefer, but yeah, it actually works unironically, which is really funny. But yeah, the idea is to as I've just explained, Fischl, Sucrose, Columbina, Nefer. Now the Carrybina team is just Taser. On-field Nefer should be optimal, or like on-field Columbina, depending on the investment. Yeah, Fischl on Serenade. Similar to a Carrybina, almost as good as Flins. Okay, we get it. So, quick TLDR on Zibai and Illuga. So, Zibai is a Geo-Crystallize skill-focused carry. She accumulates Radiance, and then if her Radiance are maxed out, like she gets Radiance by normal attacking and by triggering Lunar Crystallize, and then she enhances her skill. She can do a skill that does a direct Lunar hit. Her burst is 1 additional Lunar hit and extends her duration. She has an Ascendant Gleam, 4th normal attack, so you do want to get the 4th normal attack out, which is why she has a bit of an interruption resistance problem. But yeah, then she also Quill and Hydrogeo teammates. Oh yeah, Essential 1 is a Quill for her own damage. It's quite weak, but C2 makes it really strong. And then Hydrogeo teammates are wanted in her teams to maximize her own damage, because she gets like a defense and EM depending on if it's a Geo or a Hydro teammate. Igloa is a dedicated Zibai buffer. Burst provides a ton of quills that are like both used by Zibai's normal Geo damage as well as her Lunar damage. At C0, he's quite fine. He's like similar to C0 Chevy, if you can think about C0 Chevy for a second. But yeah, it is very important that you get his constellations, otherwise you are a bit cooked. The thing is, the problem with Igloa isn't that like his own, like his performance at C0 or C2 is weak or something. Like, yeah, that is the case, but this isn't Igloa's problem. You play him with Zibai anyway, because Geo just doesn't have supports for Zibai. I don't want this agenda from a certain content creator to reach a larger audience. I would not recommend Zhongli in 2025, like at all. It is, please. So yeah, that is a big no for me. And then like, what else are you supposed to play? You play Goro anyway. You can play Goro Chiori, but like I don't recommend that. And then you need Chiori as a baseline. But yeah, Igloa himself has a really good C2, really good C4, really good C6. As we will get into, that creates a problem. And then she also has an interruption resistance problem, which is fixed by C1 Columbina, which feels like bait, but it's fine. And then Zibai's own vertical, C1 is just 1 additional skill proc. C2 is team-wide Lunar Crystallize bonus, and like it buffs her quills by a really high amount. C4 buffs her 4th normal attack and makes it so that her attack string doesn't reset. I have no idea why they didn't put that in the baseline kit, but whatever. And then C6 is just a bunch of elevation. Signature is decent, but it doesn't really give a ton of stats, and it's just worse. It's kind of garbage if you have C2, and then gets better if you go like C3, C4, C5, C6. But yeah, at C6 you want to get it, I guess. And then I guess it's better than going for C5 if you are at C4. But yeah. The Zibai Columbina Dilemma. Zibai really wants C6 Illuga and her own C2. Her C2 is like a 40% increase or 45% increase over C0. So it is quite the jump. It's similar to a Versa situation. Assuming C2 guarantees C6 Illuga, it is better to use C2 R0 Zibai with C6 Illuga instead of C0 Columbina, C0 R1 Zibai, and then C2 Illuga, since signature is technically better than her own C1, but her own C1 is not that great. It's like a 30% increase. Aino C6 and Goro C6 have been confirmed to be on the banner, so that makes the gap even bigger. If you didn't have Goro C6, didn't have Aino C6, it is, I hate to say this, but yeah, this is a big problem. Columbina is a great pickup after you went for Zibai though, which is a really unfortunate situation that you have to first pull Columbina, then pull Zibai, because you need to guarantee that C2 Zibai with C6 Illuga and ideally C6 Goro and C6 Aino, instead of like that is the highest priority instead of Columbina basically. But she's obviously better than R1 and C3. Decide according to your situation. If you really like not quite DPSs, then obviously you should still go for Columbina. And Columbina would still be best in stock. Columbina's straight up better than Aino. There's not much else to say. Okay. Nascent, Gleam, Columbina. Terrible. Garbage unit. Please do not use Columbina. You can technically, but she's no. Technically she works with Skirk if you put her on TDDS, but she's honestly worse than Mona. Just play Mona. And then she's not even close to Yelan if she's purely built for Hydro damage. Technically she applies Hydro on every single of her hit, so you can play her like a Morlani, but she does half of Morlani's damage, probably even less. So no, please don't. And then Geo Columbina, as I've already mentioned, it's not ideal for Geo carries. There will be something in the future for Geo, I'm pretty sure. And it will be better than going for Columbina to make them in this unsynergistic archetype. Or like force them into the unsynergistic archetype. The final verdict. So, unless it's very specific scenarios, as we've already mentioned, Zibai C2, and like you need to go for C2 Zibai, and you already have Nefer Vertical, then Columbina is a huge increase. She's not as big as the essentially dogshit supports. Like, she's like Nefer, Flins, and Zibai aren't essentially dogshit without Columbina. Do not think that. But she's a very important team either way, a teammate either way. You can think of her as a better, that's the way Butterfur put it. You can think of her as a better Farina for Skirk, kind of. Like if Farina did more buffing, did more damage, and then for Skirk teams, that's how Columbina is for these not Cry teams. And then she actually has flexibility, kind of like Sucrose. She's very strong and potent in these three teams, and that makes her somewhat flexible in the meta. And she synergizes even with the worst not Cries, meaning Jehoda. I didn't really mention Jehoda at all, but that's the reason is that Jehoda doesn't really have a place. You can use her at c6 if you want to. She's probably like, you can make her sheet very high, but I just think she's very bad to play. But yeah, Jahoda can be used as a side grade, technically, if you have c6. But it's just, people don't have c6 because she ran with Doran, who was completely another archetype, but it's fine. I think they could add some Lunar reactions in the future, like Lunar Swirl or something, but honestly, I kind of doubt it. They can, or like they will make more Moonwheel characters. I think we are all sure of that. So the team, the problem is that most of the teams are just finished now. Like the last slot needs to be a non-lunar character to get the Ascendant Gleam 37% lunar reaction damage bonus. That is actually the issue with the fourth slot that isn't from Not Cry. Like that, no, that is from Not Cry, which is why the main reason why I didn't talk about Jahoda is because she disables that passive in Flins, Nefer Columbina, or Nefer Lauma Columbina. Jahoda just disables that passive. Then she can, they can fill, oh yeah, they could fill Zibai's last slot technically. There's still room for that. It would need to be a actually Zibai, yeah. Zibai also can run Igloo. No, Zibai can run Jahoda because it's also full Not Cry then, which is really annoying. It's fine. Yeah, but Zibai could get like some kind of sub DPS in the last slot. I kind of doubt it, but that could always happen. And then Sucrose upgrade. Sucrose is very important for all of the Not Cry teams, so that is also something that could happen. One second. Okay, just one minute, please. Okay, my mic stopped working like a long time ago. It's fine. Um, I I I just explained a bunch of stuff. Okay, okay, we just ignore that this happened. So I just um please ask your questions regarding Columbina in the chats. But also, I was talking about the sub DPS of Columbina. So compared to other sub DPSs, she's more like in line with Farina. She's like similar to Farina with the party-wide healer. And Viridescent Venera. That's kind of what you can think of her personal damage as. She's not Ineffbina level. She can technically outdamage Ineffbina, but only if she's on field. And obviously, if you play her as her own carry, then she does do carry levels of damage. But that's mainly Lauma doing doing quill damage. But yeah, that is something very important to note regarding Columbina. So she ends up being like a 20% of the team's damage. Usually. Unless you have C2 and R1, then she can get up to like 25% or 30%. But obviously, regarding investment, I wouldn't really recommend that, because there's always a better option, unless you are specifically playing carry Columbina. Okay. If there are no more questions, I've seen a version with... Can you use Columbina with Doin in any team? Oh, no. Not really. You can technically play stuff like Flins. Oh no. Like Flins, Nefer, Columbina, Durin. But honestly, I don't know. I wouldn't recommend that. That sounds a bit pain. I don't know why you wouldn't just play Sucrose. But you could technically play like that. Doesn't have to be super good, then it's Flins. Okay, I'm back, everyone. Can you use Witzes on carry Columbina? How much energy recharge would you need? I think you would need around like one. It depends on if you're playing Aino or not, but you should be fine with like 120 energy recharge. And Witzit does work. It would be better than Sacrificial Jade. True, I didn't really cover her DPS options, but Witzit is quite strong. But you do, like, the jump from Witsit to the signature is huge still. So I actually would still recommend to go for a signature. What are the chances she becomes Chiori? That being that she need, okay, that being that she gets no support after this, I guess that could happen, but that would be a Cyrene situation. And the thing is, Chiori doesn't have a place. Columbina still has a place with Zibai, Nefer, and Flins. So that will never change. She will always be good for these three. Prototype Amber should also be really good for, or like should be decent for, so that you don't need to build any energy recharge for on-field Columbina. Which is kind of funny to think about, that a carry can use Prototype Amber as a carry option. I know people use it on the Villet, but I've always felt like that felt very bad. Okay. Anyway, I think I will wrap it up at this point. Is Prototype Amber still best in slot in Stygian Onslaught? Yeah, I would say so. You just skip her burst in the first rotation, because you don't actually have, for example, Lauma's Holy doesn't work in the first rotation anyway, so I wouldn't recommend it. No, what? No, I meant I would recommend it. So to do hold. No, wait. To skip out on her burst on the first rotation. I'm very excited for Columbina. I think she will be a pretty big game changer, and she also has very pretty animations. Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, I think I will wrap this stream up. Thank you all for staying for the Columbina pre-release. It was rather short. I expected to be 2 hours, but yeah. See you in the next either podcast or maybe another stream. Bye bye. Oh wait, one more question. Are there alternatives for Aino and Columbina? Ineffbina. Ineffbina is also really good. Ineffbina is technically slightly better than Aino. Everyone will get her early, very true. But yeah, the reason I didn't want to recommend Ineffbina is obviously you do not want to get Ineffbina specifically for Columbina carry. Okay, bye bye. See you.